And as has mentioned, we have been working together and with Fernando in the development of the country profile for several countries. Today we will speak about France. As has been already mentioned on previous webinars, this series started 2 weeks ago with Germany and was followed by Spain last Monday. In the coming weeks, we will go with Italy, UK, Belgium, Poland, Mexico, Indonesia, and Denmark. To give you an idea of the process we have followed per country, first, a short note on the methodology followed. We have used data tables based on detailed energy balance and published indicators. Detailed review has been done to identify and describe national energy plans and subsidiary plans for renewables, energy efficiency, and infrastructure expansion. A number of conclusions have been made out of the previous inputs, and these were refined and verified through interviews with experts, which, as I can see, some of you are connected right now. And today, we offer the public interactive webinar for wider input and review. So the content that will be discussed today will be summarized in this slide. First, we will go to an introduction of the country. Then we will talk about the energy policy, governance, supply and demand of energy, energy prices, and we will finish with a summary of main indicators, specifics, issues, and of course the conclusions before all your questions. So let's begin. First of all, France is the second most populated country in Europe after Germany, with 66 million inhabitants, and it has a land area of more than 500,000 square kilometers. It has a low population density when compared to Italy, UK, or Belgium, also Germany, and the GDP per capita is around $45,000 per year, which makes it the 8th best run economy in Europe. To talk a little bit about its wind and solar resources, it has a big potential. The map on the left shows the wind resource. As you can see, France has one of the largest resources of Europe, right behind Germany and UK. Most of its resources concentrated in the northern region of the country, and it also has a great potential for developing offshore, as we will discuss further on the document. In the map on the left, on the right, we can see the solar resource. France in this case is largely dependent on the season. During the cold season, only lower latitude regions show relevant availability of harvestable solar power. However, during the summer months, power is available everywhere in the country. When we talk about the topography, France is one of the most varied countries of Europe, with elevations ranging from sea level to the highest peak of the continent, which is Mont Blanc, with 4,807 meters, and it's on the border with Italy. Much of the country is ringed with mountains, and in the northeast is the Ardennes Plateau, which extends into Belgium and Luxembourg. To the east are the Vosges, the High Alps, and the Jura Mountains, and along the Spanish border are the Pyrenees. When we speak about international waters, France has a wide extension of them, which from an energy perspective, most of these areas are being evaluated to deploy offshore wind energy. When we speak about resources, as most of you surely know, nuclear energy is the main electricity generation source, representing around 49% of total installed capacity and more than 75% for generation. Hydro energy is also very relevant, and renewables have been increasing over the past years, especially with wind energy, which is growing rapidly. Coal, natural gas, and oil are generally used as a backup, and specifically coal and oil has been decreasing over the past years. Now, to talk a little bit about the policies, according to the current administration, the two main work sites ahead are the energetic renovation of buildings and cleaner transport. The Energy Transition Bill for Green Growth, adopted on August 2015, retains some of the former targets previously known as Grenell 1 and 2. One of the differences is that this new bill aims at halving energy consumption by 2050. Some of the targets that are foreseen by this policy are the following: 40% reduction of GHG emissions by 2030, 32% share of renewables in final energy consumption, reduction of 30% of fossil energy sources, reduction of nuclear electricity, to 50% by 2025, and capping the nuclear capacity at its current level. This is one of the issues that France will need to face in the following years, because as most of you must know, there's a nuclear reactor called Flamanville that will start operations in 2017, and as the nuclear capacity is capped, then France will have to shut down several reactors before starting its operation. There's also some supporting actions as the interest-free credit for private building renovation and some subsidies for switching from diesel to electric cars. Regarding renewable energy, the National Renewable Energy Action Plan is based on RENEL 1 and 2. Some of its targets are the 23% renewable energy share by 2020, including a 10% in biofuels. France is very ambitious in biofuels. When you evaluate some reports from 2014, you can see that they have already achieved around 7 or 8% of that target. They also want to achieve 27% of renewable energy in electricity, 32% in heating and cooling, and have also established several financial measures. Some of them is the heat fund, for example, which was adopted in 2008 to support the production of heat from biomass, geothermal, solar heat, energy recovery, and heat networks for residential, services, agriculture, and industry. And also the feed-in tariffs are guaranteed. There are some other regulatory measures, and some regional and local plans and planning laws also help achieve the renewable energy targets. In the following slide, we can see on the left the capacity in 2014 and the expected capacity by 2020, and the production on the right. As you can see, France should increase its electricity production to the point of surpassing the 150 terawatt hours mark by 2020. This includes a target of 6 gigawatts of offshore capacity, from which some projects have already been approved for the Mediterranean Sea and of the Grasse Island in Brittany. As you can see, wind is the most relevant capacity increase over these years. It will almost triple its capacity. And basically, wind onshore will account for more than double the current capacity, arriving to 18.7 or 18.6 gigawatts, and 6 more gigawatts that will come from offshore. When we talk about energy efficiency, the 2014 National Energy Efficiency Action Plan targets annual energy savings of 1.5% compared to 2012 average. This foresees a reduction of final energy consumption and primary energy consumption, and has some main mechanisms that include financial incentives and auditing procedures. The Housing Energy Efficiency Improvement Plan reflects the willing of renovating 500 dwellings per year by 2017, which is pretty ambitious, and both the state and territorial authorities play a crucial role in the management of GHG emission and EE. This approach should help achieve the fixed objective of 40% reduction on energy consumption. France has also implemented the Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme, better known as White Certificates, many years ago, in 2006, under which energy suppliers must meet government-mandated targets for energy savings. The first period was from between 2006 and 2009. Then there was a second period between 2011 and 2013. And in January of this year, the third period started with an objective of 700 terawatts for the period between 2015 and 2017. To highlight some other measures in the transportation sector, governmental institutions will have to have their vehicle fleet, and the share of low-emission vehicles will be set at 10% for taxis and car renters. With electricity, French wholesale electricity market adheres to the West European design, with producers, suppliers, and traders able to buy and sell energy bilaterally via brokered contracts or on the EPX and EEX. The NOM law, which is a new law that was established a few years ago. A new capacity market has to be introduced with supply bidding beginning in 2015, preparation for the first delivery period. And regulated tariffs are maintained for household customers, the so-called blue tariff. And the transmission, distribution, and generation is generally controlled by EDF under different subsidiaries that work independently. To give you an idea, in France, EDF owns a company called RTE, which is responsible for managing 100% of the transmission network. EDF also owns ERDF, who manages 95% of distribution network. EDF also controls over 80% of the installed capacity and has over 35 million connection points in retail. This law that is mentioned here, the NOM law, aims to reduce EDF's dominant position over generation and retail in the country. The effective competition is limited, of course, because of this presence, this monopoly from EDF, and because of the regulated tariff. However, it seems that this will start to change in 2016, as regulated tariff will be abolished starting January 1st for the industrial customers. In gas, operators, energy traders, or financial players active across the gas chain must secure their supply and control costs in order to guarantee the continuity of the gas supply under proper conditions for end customers. Gas is generally purchased by mutual agreement or via brokerage. It is not a commodity subject to captive use in the same way as electricity or oil. It is rated according to price development by the substitutes, especially oil products. The most important energy source in the country, nuclear, is dependent of the 2006 Act, where various categories of regulatory or individual resolutions are listed, such as the basic nuclear installation commissioning authorization, authorization or approvals concerning the carriage of radioactive substances, regulatory resolution of a technical nature for implementation of decrees or orders issued concerning nuclear safety and radiation protection, and the National Plan on Management of Radioactive Materials and Waste applies to the government to draw up every 3 years a national plan with the purpose of drawing up a balance on existing management of radioactive materials, making an inventory of foreseeable needs for storage, indicating necessary capacities for such installations and the duration of storage. To give you an idea, there are around 58 operational reactors in France, and around half of them will reach their 40-year limit in the 2020s. So France will have to set up a plan to shut down and replace some of them and make a deep maintenance of others, and this will have an effect, for example, in electricity prices, as we will see further on the document in the presentation. And something else that is relevant is that EDF is trying to take majority stake, acquiring 51 to 75% of the share capital of Areva. Areva is in charge of reactors construction and other nuclear services, so this will increase the monopoly that is currently held by EDF in France. When we talk about climate, long-term French energy and climate policies are framed through a set of successive laws. First of all, the 2005 POP law establishes a 3% GHG emission reduction annually with the long-term objective of reaching 75% by 2030. As you can see, this is a very ambitious objective. This is why the Energy Transition Bill, published and adopted this year, aims to reducing only 40% of CO2 emissions by 2030. The 75% is just too much. So basically they have reduced their target, and this has had some controversy. The Grenelle laws set the additional goal of reducing energy consumption in buildings by 38% before 2020, because this is an important part of the energy consumption in the country. Now, to talk a little bit about the supply, we have here a simplified energy balance where we can see the primary production, import, export, and others, and the consumption of several sectors over the past 50 years. And the most important aspect here is the energy independence, which is basically the primary production divided by the gross inland consumption. As you can see in this picture, the energy independence was dropping until the 80s. and it had a huge increase when most or some of the reactors were open or were operational. This increased the energy dependence, of course, the production also. And it has remained pretty much stable since then with a little increase. When we talk about the total primary energy supply, electricity represents close to 50% of the energy supply, of course, because nuclear is the main energy source. This is followed by oil and gas. Electricity is basically one of the reasons because it is so high is because the electric heating represents around 35% of primary residence and also 25% of floor space in the tertiary sector. So we have a lot of electric heating when compared to other European countries. Oil and coal consumption is decreasing steadily over the past year. So this information is from 2013. So probably right now, coal and oil have even less share. When we talk about electricity, as it was already mentioned, nuclear is the main electricity source. It accounts for 47% of the capacity and 74% from the production. This is from Enerdata in 2014. The second most important source is hydro, which accounts for 19% of the capacity and 13% of the production. As you can see, renewables, even though they have 10% capacity, they only produce 4%. To talk about interconnections, France's export capacity accounts for 10% of total installed capacity and import capacity for 8%. It is interconnected with Belgium, UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, and Switzerland. The market is integrated with neighboring markets to varying degrees, and it is a significant exporter of electricity with a net balance of 47 terawatts in 2013, even though France is a net electricity importer from Germany. After being reluctant for several years, as some of you might know, France has accepted to develop more interconnections with Spain, which, as was stated last week, is basically an energy island. Talking about gas, France is the fourth largest market in Europe, with consumption of around 10% of European Union demand, and all gas is basically imported. Gas production is negligible. Most of the supply imported comes from Norway, Russia, and the Netherlands. France also has the third largest LNG storage capacity of Europe and the longest gas transmission network as a result of its borders with 5 European countries. When we talk about demand, as you can see on the picture on the left, demand grew pretty rapidly until 2010, 2011, when the economic recession hit. Then there was a slight decrease of the energy consumption. And when we divide it by sectors, in the picture of the right, we can see that transport and industry account for around 50%, but residential is 30%. So residential is very important, huge in France. In the industry, the electricity and natural gas are the main consumption sources. As you can see in this picture, 35% for electricity, 30% for natural gas. When we talk about transport, oil is the most important source of consumption, as in many other European countries. However, France, in this case, they're trying to change this. In general, taxes for oil products are very high, more than 50% for gasoline and diesel, and there are even some diesel taxes being implemented to eliminate the gap between diesel prices and gasoline. This has caused that oil consumption in general has decreased around 3% in 2014. This is also caused by stabilization, of course, of the number of vehicles since 2005 and their increasing efficiency. When we talk about services, electricity accounts for around 53% of energy consumption. Again, this is related to the electric heating. Something similar happens with the residential sector, where electricity and gas are the most relevant consumption sources, but here biofuels and waste are also pretty relevant for heating. On what regards to the national energy bill, as we can see, electricity is the more important one in industry and also for household and services. But in transport, of course, as in all the European countries, oil has the bigger hand. When we compare prices in France with other European countries, we use the Z score, which evaluates the average value of one data against the mean of all the countries. We have evaluated several countries, and electricity prices in France are one of the lowest in Europe, thanks to the relative independence from fossil fuels, also thanks to their abundant nuclear and hydroelectric power. As you can see here, the Z score in 2014 is 0.1, which means that they are basically in the mean low of prices in Europe, with 9.9 in 2014. Same happens with gas prices. They are around the average, but there are some special taxes for large consumers and CO2 taxes that will increase in 2016, so these prices are expected to grow. Now, the most important thing of the presentation, the summary, basically. A few specifics that we want to discuss. First of all, France is considered number 4 in the top 5 of overall energy efficiency according to the International Energy Efficiency Scorecard. They basically analyze 31 energy efficiency indicators for world's largest economies, and some of the most important ones in France were the renovation of all public and tertiary sector buildings to improve energy performance, the mandatory energy performance certificate for building, the building permits require energy reports. There are some of the indicators that were highly rated for France and therefore gave them the 4th position in this ranking. France also has a strong technology position in nuclear power and waste management. It is not a technological leader in renewable energies, but it is a major player in biofuels within the European Union. Another highlight is that since 2010, following the adoption of the new thermal regulation for building, natural gas has replaced electricity as the largest energy source for heating in new buildings, of course. When we talk about technology, there is general research focused on low carbon technologies and energy. France also has a mandated generation adequacy standard of 3 hours for the loss of load expectation a year, which is related to the number of grid reinforcements that are planned or under research. These two points are related to one issue that we'll be discussing in the next slide, so bear with me for a second. Also, 3 million smart meters for electricity will be rolled out by 2016 and 35 million by 2020. Aside from the electricity meters, gas meters will roll out around 150,000 by early 2016, and before 2022, the rollout should reach 11 million households. RTE and Red Eléctrica have also started an underground high voltage DC in February, and will increase its capacity from 1,400 to the double, 2,800 megawatts. Nuclear energy share must be reduced to 50% before 2025, and the capacity must be capped at current level. This was, as again, already mentioned. So these two small things. The France has a mandated generation adequacy and the grid reinforcements. Basically, when we see the issues, we will go to the last one. Sorry for that. RTE is forecasting difficulties meeting the generation adequacy standard in 2015 and 16. Basically, RTE evaluated what will be the expected consumption of energy in these winters, and due to the expected cold winters, it seems that France is lacking around 6 gigawatts in 2015 for capacity. And basically, France is only relying on imports. So this is a problem, because if you do not get these imports somehow, then it will be a problem during the winter. There was already a peak of of energy consumption. It was around 2008, on the 8th of 2009, the 8th of February, which was a very cold one. So France is trying to avoid this with all these projects of interconnections. So to go on other issues, there's uncertainty around energy transition law based on political controversy. This is related to what was mentioned regarding the FOP law and the energy transition bill. As you know, the GHG emission target was reduced from 75% to 40% by 2030, and there are some that think that this shouldn't have been done, but the 75% was, in my opinion, too ambitious. Nuclear power as key element in France's energy independence and energy price competitiveness. As it was mentioned also, there are around 58 operating reactors, and half of them will go through maintenance very soon. This is a problem because this maintenance will increase electricity prices, of course. And for example, there's a reactor that I already mentioned also, Flamanville, that will open in 2017. Its cost was much higher than expected. So when it starts operating, also electricity prices will take a hit. Gas-fired cycle power plants need to back up fluctuating renewable energy. This is an issue because this also happens with Spain. If you were here last week, you will have seen that Spain has a large overcapacity. This is somehow related to the installation of renewables. When renewables were installed in Spain, gas power plants or coal power plants weren't dismantled. They were kept there as backup. France is doing somehow the same thing. So this is a problem because when you evaluate countries as Germany, for example, they do not use this type of backup for the renewables. They use other renewable sources as backup, which will be the ideal. Also, fracking for shale gas has been banned in 2011, which is a problem because it seems like several reports have stated that France has a huge shale gas potential, one of the largest in Europe, and until now they haven't been able to exploit that potential. There is sustained high investment in smart grid development to achieve EU interconnectivity goal. Basically, this is related also to the problem of the difficulties. They need to increase interconnection. They need to increase interconnection not only because they will increase their renewable capacity and therefore to achieve the interconnectivity goal, but also to face high demand peaks. To go through the conclusions, nuclear investment has delayed renewable energy development and has led to a very centralized system in the country. France has always focused their energy generation on nuclear reactors. So they haven't developed as much renewables as other countries. So this is something that is currently changing. But it has been stated in the next point, nuclear are now limited, but this could vary. There's a political change. As we have seen in several countries in Europe, there are different political views. Some support renewables, some support nuclear, some support coal, some support natural gas, etc. So right now, nuclear is being tapped, and it seems like renewables are, France is betting renewables, but we do not know if in the next 5 or 10 years something could change. This, for example, doesn't happen for energy efficiency, which is more constant. I mean, if you can live under the same conditions that you are living today, but spending less energy and therefore less money, why not do it? So basically, every political point of view supports energy efficiency. The renewables participation on electricity generation is increasing gradually, and some new technologies have been recently developed, such as offshore wind, as was already stated, in the Mediterranean. And France wants to develop around 6 gigawatts over the next years. And French energy prices are still regulated, but this could change in the short term. This is partially so. There has been a liberalized market since 2007, but only under certain conditions you can go to this liberalized market. In fact, only around less than 10% of current consumers are in the liberalized market. So let's hope that this will change from 2016 when some regulated prices will be eliminated. And buildings efficiency should increase to 38% by 2020. This, of course, as it was also stated before, is one of the more important targets for France, as in many countries in Europe, the buildings are quite old and inefficient, so this will help achieve several objectives regarding energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions. So that is all the presentation. If you have any questions regarding issues, conclusion, or anything else, Hans, Fernando, and myself are here to answer them. Thank you for your time.